Hi, welcome to Stash Blaster Quilts. I am Maria Spitalnik, and I am here to help you make your quilting journey go a little bit easier and a little bit more organized. This has been a crazy time with technology for me. I am halfway through the live stream I had planned, and my system all locked up. I don't know what happened with that, so I'm starting all over. We just won't do the whole hour. We're only going to do the beginning part of this today. But this is all stemming from a problem that happened on Wednesday. So I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's my streaming program or if it's YouTube that's doing this to me. But somebody doesn't like me this week. Anyway, these meetings are normally the first and third Wednesday of the month, 7 o'clock. It starts with an organizational tip because by trade I am a professional organizer. That's what I do between 60 and 80 hours a week. Which is why I have gotten way behind in the editing of these live streams. But I'm hoping as the holidays get closer that things will slow down a little bit and I'll be able to get caught up. But I always start with the organizational tip, and then we often talk about quilting, things that I'm doing. I answer any questions that you send to me, either in the chat or if there's something in by email, you can send it to mail, M-A-I-L, at stashblasterquilts.com, and I answer questions on any topic. That could be how to do something in your garage, it could be time management, or it could be quilting related. Usually it's quilting related, but I do get some oddball questions, and so whatever it is, go ahead and ask it. If it's too personal, I won't answer, but most people don't ask me stuff that weird. So that's what we're going to do. So the tip for this week is about the Pareto Principle, which is more commonly known as the 80-20 rule. So if you Google 80-20 rule or Pareto, P-A-R-E-T-O principle, it's a man who created this with the idea of economics. And he was saying that the virtuous 20% of the population are the ones that drive most of the economic system, and the trivial 80% are kind of along for the ride. So why am I talking to you about an economic principle? Well, interestingly enough, in nature, the 80-20 rule applies in many, many, many ways. So for example, out of all the paper you've stored, you really only need about 20% of it. You wear about 20% of your clothes. If you have 5 kitchen gadgets, you use one of them all the time. And if it breaks, you're more likely to replace it than use the other ones, except in an emergency situation. If you're throwing a party, 2 people do 80% of the work. If you're writing a paper or something, you know, a project or something for work, 20% of your effort gives you this big bang for the buck, and then the rest is the trivia that you're plugging in to get it finished. So it really applies to a lot of different things. And people have taken this concept and applied it all across the board. So there's time management classes using the 80-20 rule. There's life coaching that does that. There's a lot of people who do organizing based on that principle when they're working with their clients. I don't know that it's a strict percentage, so don't worry about it exactly. But the concept to me is that you need to put your time where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Okay? Now, how do you do that? It may mean that you have to find another way to accomplish that last 20% other than you doing it. So as an example, I hate to clean. I hate to clean, particularly bathrooms. It was a punishment for me when I was a kid that if I was being punished for something, I had to clean the bathrooms. So that made me hate it even more. And so I pay somebody to do it. So I don't have to. I can use the time that they're scrubbing my toilets to be making money, and I make more than I'm paying them. So that's a smart use of my time. I think it was Getty who once said that if he saw a $100 bill on the sidewalk, it wasn't worth him bending down to pick it up because he was making more money just walking down the sidewalk than that $100. Now, personally, I'd have picked up the $100, but I'm cheap that way. So that's the idea. So how can you make this work for you? Let's say you like to sew quilt tops, but you don't like to do the quilting part. So for you, that is the 80% drudgery that you have to do to finish the quilt. There's people out there that love to quilt and hate to piece. Or I've taken people shopping and I've helped them pick out colors for a wedding quilt or something like that. And what I'll do is I'll trade my time for their time. And so I will help them with their projects to get it done, the top done part, and then they do my quilting for me. And we figure out what the equivalent is going to be. So I pay in time, but it's time doing something I enjoy versus something that I dislike. And it isn't really that I dislike quilting, it's just it takes so much time and I have so little of it that for me, quilting by check is a much more efficient and useful way to get those presents out the door. Speaking of which, I know it's October. If you haven't started your Christmas sewing, it's time to get started. Anyway, back to things. So one thing to keep in mind is, are you using your time efficiently? Are you using your space efficiently? So for example, today I'm wearing something you've never seen me wear here, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But in my closet that I share with my husband, the clothes I wear all the time are right in the front of the rod. It's probably not even 20%. So for me, even though I have a very limited space, even I don't use all of it. And I purge my stuff out all the time. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now, in terms of the clothes. Okay, those of you who have seen me before have probably said, she looks the same as always because she's not wearing any makeup, which I'm not. My hair is usually down, and I'm usually wearing a nicer shirt. But I am going to be driving a canteen truck for the Fairfax County Police Department for DWI checkpoint tonight. So I'm wearing my volunteer shirt. Usually, I've come home from a job, I've grabbed a shower, I'm hopefully dry because I've eaten dinner while after my shower and before I come on here. But I never have time to put on makeup. So you're getting bare bones. This is who I am. This is how I am when I wake up in the morning, if you want to think about it that way. But yes, so you won't normally see me in my Vips shirt, but here I am. Originally, this was supposed to be on Wednesday, but there were computer problems, and there were computer problems earlier today. Like I said, I don't know if it's YouTube or if it's my streaming program that's causing the problem, but about halfway in it locked up. So we're going to finish at 8 o'clock as usual because I don't want to keep people. And then when I edit this, I'll edit it from this restart. But anyway, another thing, so that's it for our organizational tips. So if that's what you're here for, you've gotten it. By the way, if you enjoy these videos, either the live stream or when these get edited down, either case, please subscribe and then hit the bell. It'll let you know when I'm doing another one of these. So for example, the Wednesday one, when it locked up, I rescheduled for today. So you wouldn't have known to come on today. So it'll let you know when I'm on or when I've posted something. And that will also let me see if this is something that people want me to keep doing. So there we go. You can also reach me at mail@stashblasterquilts.com. Okay, so those of you who have been watching, this is the red, white, and blue quilt that we've been working on. And so the top is all done. I got it all ironed. I got the sashing on. Let me see if I can get you the wide view here. Hold on. There you go. Ta-da! Here it is. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to quilt it. It'll probably be something swirly. I do tend to prefer to use organic shapes on geometric quilts and vice versa. But since this is a Stash Blaster variant, this is also a great time to practice on skills that you don't normally get to practice on. Stash Blaster quilts are designed to be used for charity quilts, etc. A fast quilt if you need something in a rush. Something to practice your skills on both for piecing and for quilting. So if you want to just do a stitch in the ditch, or you want to do a 1/4 of an inch inside the red, maybe, as a way to tack it down, If you want to practice your feathers in the reds, do whatever you want. Like I said, this is a variant. The original is done on black, and the stripes normally go the other way. I just thought it looked kind of cool to put it up this way this time. But this is almost a square quilt. It is actually a little bit longer this way, but you could see more of the colors if I put it horizontal than if I put it vertical. So that's why I did it this way. Okay, so this last weekend I attempted something called the Global Quilt Connections Sampler Platter. Now, Global Quilt Connections is something that I'm hoping to be on at some point, but it is a hub where you can find instructors, either for yourself or for a guild or for a shop. And they do either live or virtual classes. And so I was on there, and on the sampler platter, I wasn't on there as an instructor. I'm sorry. Let me clarify that. I was watching. And the instructors do these little 15-minute classes. And so there was a gal named Tina Craig who did one, which just exploded my brain. It was such a simple concept that I knew in my head, but had never put together. So I'm going to get you started on it. I encourage you to look her up, maybe take her class if this is of interest to you. It's about English paper piecing, but improvisational blocks. Now, what's an improvisational block? An improvisational block is one where you don't start with a pattern. You usually start with a color concept of what you want to do. Do you want to do an analogous color scheme? Do you want to do a complementary color scheme? You know, what kind of colors do you want to put into this quilt? But you don't actually plan your cuts in advance. I didn't even know that that's what they called it. I did it on a quilt because I thought it was kind of cool, and I was just having fun. And then somebody was like, "Oh, that's a beautiful improvisational quilt," and I'm like, "It's a what?" So I was in the trend before I knew it. But the idea is that it's very fluid and very flexible. You grab a strip of fabric and you sew it to another strip, and they don't have to be the same size. They don't even have to be rectangular. They can be wedges. They can be chunks. It doesn't matter. You sew two things together, and then you cut and you sew something to that, and then you cut that and you sew something there, and you build this quilt out. And sometimes you'll sew a bunch of chunks together over here, and then you attach those to a strip that's on this other chunk of thing. So it's kind of like a minestrone soup, okay? And so it's just got all of these pieces and chunks that just kind of mesh all in together, and you can either do blocks and then set them next to each other. You can take them and then use them as half of a half square triangle, an HST. And so you've got maybe white on one side and then this really chunky self-made fabric, if you want to think about it that way, on the other side. You can make it the middle of flying geese. There's all kinds of different things you can do with these things once you make them. And what's really cool is if you don't like it, you whack off a chunk and you keep adding more until it's closer to what you liked. And what's the worst that'll happen? It'll be a great quilt for a charity. It'll be a great quilt for a dog bed. You'll be able to use it for something, I promise you. Sooner or later, you'll get it down to a point where even if the pieces are tiny, you'll like it. It will happen. Now, a lot of times people hate their quilt tops by the time they're done with them because they've sewn the same thing 8 million times in order to get the quilt piecing done. With this, that doesn't happen. And you can actually, if you don't want to make the blocks and sew them together, you can keep doing this until you have a full quilt. So, you know, this one weird angle will be coming off here and another one will be going off, and nobody will care because it'll be really cool. So, improvisational quilts are a lot of fun to do, and it's a great mental break. If you've gotten yourself stuck in a rut, or you're just not feeling very creative, or you're just tired and you're afraid to work on the important quilt that you need to do, I do a lot of sewing of my leaders and enders when I'm super tired, but sometimes it's not a physical tired as much as it is a mental tired, and that's a great time to do improvisational quilting. So I was watching this, and this would not be a when you're tired kind of activity. English paper piecing is perfect for on-the-go sewing. And I'm going to show you what she was doing as a concept. If you want to know more, you can take her class. If you want to know more about English paper piecing in general, I encourage you to send me a note at mail@stashblasterquilts.com or leave me a message here in the chat, and I'd be happy to talk about it. And I can also, if you'd like, we can do some improvisational quilting here on another one of the live streams, or I can do an actual video on it. Let me know what you'd like. Okay, so let's talk about her thing here. So what we're going to do, she started with a piece of cardstock that was, I think, 8 by 10 because she was doing a mug rug. I'm just using a standard index card size. This is 4 by 6, I think. Whatever it is. I just had some cardstock. Okay. With English paper piecing, you start with a piece of stock, and you're going to wrap fabric around the edges. Now she uses glue, which I've never done. I've always just whip stitched them. I've always thread basted mine. But I watched her do it. She has some really cool techniques for that. So if you want to use glue, again, watch her videos, take her classes. But in this particular case, we're just going to use this because this is what I have. Okay? If I was going to be doing something where I had a plan, let's say I wanted to do a mug rug. Well, this would be a little small. You couldn't put a plate and a cup on here. I wouldn't want anything as big as a placemat. Hold on. Placemat. But I'd want something a little bit bigger than this. But 8 by 10 looked like a great thing, but you do whatever you want. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of red fabric. Actually, this is some of the red fabric from this quilt, some of my leftovers. It hasn't gotten put away yet. Don't tell anybody. Okay, so I'm going to put this down. All right, let me get my stuff together and my glasses on. I try not to wear them when I'm talking to you because not only do I look like Granny Gertie, but yeah, the reflections can get distracting. So, okay, so let's switch over cameras here. And for some reason, that's my problem. It's this camera. Huh. Because this is where it froze when I was doing the other thing. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come back to here. Can you see me yet? Am I still... There I am. Okay. There's a delay, by the way, from my broadcast program to YouTube. So that's why I was waiting, because it has to come up on the YouTube screen for me to know that it's part of the live stream. So now we know that the problem is something where the computer is not letting go of camera 3. So, how am I going to do this? Well, I don't want to make anybody seasick, but I'm going to try to move this camera, and I'm going to hold it, which is going to make this really hard. Okay, that's the far side. Okay, so I'm going to be doing this one-handed, so it's going to be horrible. Okay, I apologize. So, what you do is you're going to take some sort of an angle that you like. Okay, let me hold this with my elbow. Okay, this is a first, I gotta say. Nothing quite like doing things live. Okay, so I'm going to draw this line. Now, this is obviously not going to be perfect because this ruler is going to shift on me. But hopefully, can you see the line? There you go. It's hard to see, but you can probably see it right here. Okay? All right, so now what I'm going to do, actually, let me see if I have a, here's a pen. Pen might be better. Okay, let me see if I can redraw this line. Or something close. If I'd have known it was going to be like this, I'd have brought a marker, but there you go. Okay, so. I just don't want to write on my fabric either. But if I have this on the white paper that I had planned, you wouldn't be able to see it. Okay, so there's our first line. Okay? Now, you can use pen for this, but what I would be concerned about is that since your fabric is going to wrap over this edge right here, you could have that ink transfer, and then it would be right in your line between your fabrics, so it would be in the seam. It might become visible, but I don't know that. So it's something where you might want to A, take our class, but also pay attention to that. Now, the thing with improvisational quilting is that you can do anything you want. Okay, I could make this a wedge shape. How can I hold this? There we go. We're not blocking as much. There we go. Okay, you can see a little bit more of it now. So I could do a line here and get a wedge. I can cross over like this, and I'd have an X here. Hold on. It's really hard to see. Okay, I'd have an X right here. So I'd have two triangles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and put this back on top here. Here I am. Hi. I'm going to draw a few lines, and I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. It'll be a little bit better that way, I think. And I will find out what's going on with this camera, and we will have it fixed for next time. So one thing I would recommend you not do is to have a bunch of pieces that end in the corners. Because if you're doing a square, now if you're just doing a mug rug, it's not a problem. But if you're actually going to piece that in with another square, you're going to have a lot of fabric laying over itself, and you could get a big humpy section. But like I said, if it's something like a mug rug, go for it. Doesn't matter. Okay, so this has 6 pieces. Okay, there you go. So this is what my block will look like. Now the cool thing about doing the English paper piecing this way, and doing this with English paper piecing, is that the seam allowances are created when you cut the fabric, not when you make the pattern. So this is the size within a couple of millimeters, because of the thickness of the fabric, that my final piece will be. Okay? Oops. By the way, these things also reverse you, so I'm trying to do this backwards. Okay, so so I wouldn't start with too many pieces. You could, if you wanted to, make this with like 40 pieces, but then you're going to have lots of seam allowances on the back stacking up, and you're going to have these little teeny tiny bits of color showing. So the next step is to number these, and you can number them in any color order you want. 1, 2, I mean in any order you want. 3, 4, 5, 6. This is not paper piecing. This isn't regular paper piecing where you'll be sewing on the machine. This is all done by hand. So if these are not in the assembly order, it doesn't matter as much. With regular paper piecing, you're going to be putting the pieces together in the order that they're numbered. So that's super important. In this case, it's not so important. Now, at this point, if you're happy with this design and layout, this is a great time to take a picture. Because if you drop these pieces and you had 40 of them, you are going to be so mad at yourself because it'll take you forever to put them back together. So since we don't want to do that, just snap a quick pic, just so you have it. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut these apart. Now, I would be a little bit more careful if I had more time. So I had a little bit of a bump in one of these. Now, one of the points that she made was that if that happens to you, do not trim it down, because your other piece will then be missing a little bit. So just go ahead and leave it. However you cut it, that's how it is. If somebody gets out a ruler to make sure that your seams are perfect, you don't want them as a friend anyway. So, okay. Now, you can audition your colors on this if you want to. I tend not to. I pick a color scheme and then I grab random things that fit in that color scheme. But one thing you might want to consider is value. And that you might want to think about a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these pieces back on the red. I'm going to separate them a little bit. So this is not exactly how it would fit. This won't be the finished size, but you can kind of see them a little better. Okay, let me grab this camera again. Okay, here we go. and it's upside down, so I'm going to spin the camera around. Nobody gets sick. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay? Now, like I said, you could take colored pencils, like this one, and color this in. You could just put a little splash of color on here, you know, a little block, whatever it is that you want. Okay, again, I'm trying to do this one-handed and backwards. So, okay. So, number 2 here. So, I could color this in, like this. Now, if you're doing it based on value, I would pick colors for the value. So maybe I say, okay, 2 is going to be a medium shade, so I'm going to use this blue, but maybe I use a yellow on 1, and then maybe I want this one to be a light shade too, this number 3 here. So maybe I use a light color like yellow there, but maybe this 4 I want to have be really dark, so maybe I use a dark blue. Okay, so you can do this by color to represent the various values instead of the actual color that you've colored it. And what that will do for you is it will give you some consistency throughout your quilt. If all of your squares are this size and you're doing a bed size quilt and there is some lights, some mediums, and some darks in each of the squares, it'll be nicely sprinkled through your quilt. Sometimes with improvisational quilting, if you're just grabbing out of a giant stack of scraps, you might wind up with a section that's more blues and greens and a section that might have some more reds, which is perfectly fine. But if that's something that you want more control over, I would go ahead and color these, but not for what color I'm going to put on it, but what value of the color I'm going to put on it. Because if I put in a light purple or a light yellow, either way, it's going to be good compared to having everything kind of in muddy shades that are medium. We want to make sure we have some high contrast in the blocks to give it more energy and movement. So you could also, once you did your color scheme, snap another picture if you wanted. So for me, that makes perfect sense. Now, when it's time to actually pick your fabrics, so this is just a triangular scrap that I have, and this is scrap number 3. Okay. If I put this on my fabric, okay, now in this particular case, it's going to go with the number towards the fabric, okay? What I want to do is make sure that I have enough fabric all the way around my scrap to do the job, because what I'm going to do is I would trim it closer, but no closer than 1/4 inch. I like it to be a little beefier actually, but then I'm going to simply fold it over. Now like I said, she glues hers down. I'm trying to have this up where you can see it. Normally this would be on the other camera. There you go. Alright, and I'll fold this one back. And then there's this tail hanging out here, but you can see where my finger is. I've got a nice crisp point. And so then here's my third side. Okay, and then I would normally just take and thread base this down, and then it can just go into a bag, and then I carry it with me, and then I have my little chart or my picture or whatever it is, and then I can put them together at that point wherever I am. So that's kind of the way I look at it. I will often, if I'm going to be doing something with a whole bunch of this kind of quilt, I will put in in this case, top right corner, I will give it a letter or a number, so maybe A1, so that I know it's not the piece number, okay, but it's A1. And then when I look in my photographs, I label my photograph for this particular improv block A1. So if that makes more sense to help you track. So for example, in November, I'm going to be going to San Diego to speak at a conference. And I'm going to be taking some English paper piecing projects with me. Now, in my case, I'm doing hexagons, so it's a little bit easier because they're all hexagons. You don't have to worry about orientation or anything like that. But if I was doing this project, certainly I would have it on my phone, quick and easy to reach out to. And since it would say A1 here, I'd have the little baggie with the pieces and the scraps, and I'd just put a little piece of painter's tape on the baggie that says A1. And that just makes it really easy. And I can transport this anywhere. I can do this anywhere. The nice thing about English paper piecing, you need a pair of scissors. Now, if you're going to be on a plane, I would pre-cut the fabrics, even if I haven't had a chance to baste them on, so that they're close, and then take them on the plane as they are. You can always trim pieces or do whatever you need to do when you get back to the hotel that night. But you can get everything sewn together. It doesn't matter because on the back, you've got all your seam allowances sticking out, but that's fine. You want that to happen. Excuse me. If you haven't done paper piecing before, what you may not know, and let me show this on a little bit bigger piece, it'll be easier to see. Once you've done your piecing, you're going to have these pieces in the back. This will be completely encased, this cardboard, but you will pop this out at the end, and then your sewing will hold all of your points and everything together. So it'll be just as if you'd sewn it on a machine, but you can do almost impossible things with English paper piecing that you can't do on a machine. And then the card just comes out. If you're doing something like hexagons, you can then reuse the card. But what you don't want to do is take off the outer ring of whatever it is. And I like to keep the 2 outer rings. If I'm running low on pieces, I'll pop the ones in the middle and then add them to the outer side. Because there's only a certain number of these things that you want to have just lying around. But anyway, so that's that. So that's the class that I took. Let me just double check her name again to make sure I got it right. It's Tina Craig, C-R-A-I-G, on Global Quilt Connection. And again, if you want to see anything on English paper piecing, improv quilting, paper piecing, leaders and enders, any of that other stuff that I've talked about, shoot me an email at mail@stashblasterquilts.com or leave a comment on the video. Thank you so much for your patience. For those of you who have stuck it out with me this whole time, I truly appreciate it, especially since they wound up watching the beginning part twice. But please and thank you, and I will see you soon. First and third Wednesday of every month. Take care. Bye-bye.